Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1388. A Sudden Gathering. The Evernight Goddess nodded and didn't say anything else. She reached out her palm and grabbed a corner of the void and tugged lightly. A thin layer of a night curtain gently floated down, covering Klein's body as it silently seeped in. Klein silently took in the blessings from the dream for 2 seconds. He pressed his hand to his chest and bowed. He took 2 steps back and left the astral world. The Evernight Goddess stood at the borders of the Divine Kingdom as she watched him leave. In the next second, Klein landed in the projection of the giant king's court in the ruins of the Battle of Gods. Then, like Aman, he walked to the edge of the grayish-blue door and raised his hand to create a blue illusory door. Through the door, Klein entered the forsaken land of the gods. Following the guidance of fate, he wandered straight to the peak of a mountain range. There was a huge crucifix erected there, one covered with a faint shadow. Klein stared at the shadow for a few seconds before sighing slightly. He bent down and picked up an ancient silver mirror that was placed near the huge cross. Then, he turned around and vanished from the forsaken land of the gods. At the same time, the Worms of Spirit, who didn't need to be on duty in Sapphira Castle, informed him of Queen Mystic's current location. Klein raised his hand and took out the magic wishing lamp from the junk pile. Using the ownership connection between it and Bernadette, he used another, wandering, to appear on a rather hidden island where Emerald City was. Bernadette was flipping through the latest album catalog from Intis. Just as she sensed something, she saw Gehrman's sparrow hand her the magic wishing lamp. "Thank you," Klein said in a very normal voice. Bernadette pursed her lips as though she wanted to say something, but at that moment, her eyes flashed as though she had seen something and prophesied something. Hence, she silently reached out and took the magic wishing lamp. Klein then took out a metal cigar case that had signs of corrosion on its surface. "This is your payment." Even without the eye of mystery prying, Bernadette could sense that the iron cigar case was extraordinary. She could roughly guess what kind of corrosion had happened to it. However, she didn't choose to accept it because of that reason, but she suddenly felt that she had no reason to reject it. She hesitated for a moment before taking the iron cigar case. If he was still in a rather crazy state like before, Klein definitely would have smiled and said in an exaggerated manner the moment Bernadette hesitated, "This is a gift from Uncle. Take it." But now, he was only left with that last bit of lucidity. He had to put in a lot of effort to prevent himself from falling asleep and not having the impulse to act like a clown. After leaving Bernadette's Emerald City, Klein seized the opportunity to wander to Backland, to Dr. Aaron Series' home. Will Aucepton, who was sitting in a pile of toys, raised his head and looked at Dwayne Dantes in front of him. His tears suddenly streamed down as he choked. "I finally feel the opportunity." He was referring to the opportunity for accommodating the Fate Pathway's uniqueness. Klein squatted down and said without any expression, "I am here to help you accommodate it. I'll steal your childhood and youth and allow you to instantly grow up. Then, by relying on a level of above the sequences but below that of a great old one, I'll forcefully help you to accommodate the die of probability. Of course, that alone won't be enough. It will require an additional fooling and use of a bug." The tears that Will Aucepton dripped down suddenly stopped. He muttered in astonishment. "So the 2 choices are actually the same." Typically speaking, the accommodation of a pathway's uniqueness required one to be naturally born with it, seek an existence at the level of a great old one to help, or rely on a simplified advancement ritual to complete it. There was no other possibility. The Snake of Fate, Will Aucepton, clearly wasn't born with the uniqueness, and only had the 2 options left to consider. His focus had been on holding a simplified ritual, which was to wait for the opportunity of fate. Who knew that this opportunity was actually when Klein was approaching the level of a great old one? In essence, it was the second method. With this in mind, the chubby child, Will Aucepton, cried even harder. He felt as though he had been deceived by fate. Let the life school of thought's demigods send over the die of probability. Normally, with your luck, the die of probability should be by your side. Klein ignored Will's crying. Let's begin as soon as possible. I don't have much time left. Will stopped and looked at Klein for a moment before he said, slightly choking, "Forget it, let's wait for the next opportunity. Given your current state, it would be a huge burden for you to forcibly help me accommodate it. Perhaps you would lose control on the spot. I don't want to face the Lord of the Mysteries. Okay, next time. I have a premonition." With that said, Will looked into Klein's eyes and said, "I have a feeling that the next opportunity will be better." Klein maintained his reverie-like expression as he said in a low voice, "Is this a prophecy?" Will Ossepton's tears flowed again. "No, it's a blessing." Klein nodded slightly, stood up, and took a step back. During this process, his figure gradually faded away and soon disappeared. He returned to Sapphira Castle and sat on the high-backed chair, allowing the grayish-white fog to envelop him. After surveying the area and confirming the states of the crimson stars, Klein leaned back in his chair in exhaustion and slightly raised his right hand. This time, he didn't create the fake world again. On the two sides of the long model table, crimson beams of light shot out at the same time, freezing into the members of the Tarot Club, the Hangman, the Sun, the Hermit, the Magician, and the rest. This sudden gathering was clearly beyond Audrey's and company's expectations. It left them surprised and alarmed. Before that, although they had come to Mr. Fool's Divine Kingdom on occasions that weren't a Monday afternoon, it was all planned. They knew in advance that they would be dragged here. They would have either applied for a mini-gathering in advance, avoid the full moon ravings, or treat Mr. World with psychological problems. It could be said that, apart from the first time, this was the second time they were summoned by Mr. Fool without any warning. This made even the slowest members of the club catch the hint of uneasiness and feel the air freeze. Thinking back to the World Gairman Sparrow's visit and the words of Mr. Fool's blessed, Audrey, Alger, and Zio simultaneously had similar thoughts. Is it finally here? Audrey subconsciously turned her head and looked down at the bottom end of the long model table. There was no one there. Although she was already mentally prepared, Audrey couldn't help but be stunned as emotions of uncontrollable sadness surged within her. In her heart, the World Gairman Sparrow's image had long since turned from a crazy adventurer and an extremely dangerous beyonder to a person who wore a cold and tough facade but was a gentle, powerful, loving, mysterious, and lonely man who was burdened with many friends on his back. She believed that amongst the Tarot Club members she knew the world the best apart from Mr. Star. And now, this friend seemed to have encountered some misfortune, leaving behind only an empty seat. The Tarot Club lost its first official member. Where did Klein go? Leonard suddenly felt a little flustered. In this world, he was the only one he could befriend. Previously, when Klein suddenly appeared in the southern continent and threw the gold coin into the cathedral's donation box, Leonard had already had a strange premonition. He had the feeling that Klein was about to receive the judgment of fate and was bidding farewell to the past. This was the same as the time back in Tingen when they decided to step out together and face Magos. Old Man's recent silence has been a little bizarre. Could something really have happened to Klein? With Mr. Fool's level and status, as long as there's a chance, he should be able to be saved. Leonard's heart tightened as he suddenly turned his body and cast his gaze at Mr. Fool at the top end of the long model table. This mighty existence was still enveloped by the grayish-white fog, preventing others from seeing his condition. At this moment, Emlyn, Catalia, and Derek also discovered Mr. World's absence. Coupled with the suddenness of this gathering, they were both shocked and puzzled. They didn't know what had happened, but their instincts told them that it wasn't a good thing. As a clairvoyant who had recently advanced, Katla even felt that there was a certain problem with Mr. Fool. Mr. World isn't here. Zio had previously mentioned that Mr. Fool and his few blessed were about to face a major challenge, and it's very likely that they would suffer a bad fate. Furs was also somewhat alarmed, inevitably having a strong fear due to some unknown change. She had once thought that she would sigh in relief because of Mr. World's disappearance, but from the looks of it, it wasn't like that. Instead, she found her heart heavy and a little horrified. Only then did she realize that at some point in time, the world had become the pillar of support for the Tarot Club outside of Mr. Fool. It made everyone feel at ease when they saw him. Of course, some fear was unavoidable. As Justice Audrey and company turned around and looked at the top end of the long model table, Klein, who was already the real fool, said in a low voice, "This is a last-minute gathering. Mr. Fool is very exhausted." Audrey, who sensed this, felt her heart tighten. She looked around and stood up as usual. After the members of the Tarot Club stood up one after another, Audrey lifted the ends of her skirt with a heavy heart and curtsied at the end of the long model table. "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool,"